Is Fallout 4 possible? Episode 1 Mutants and Explosions. Please stand by. Hi, you might have heard of the video game series Fallout. I hear it's pretty popular. Today we will be talking about Fallout 4, the latest installment in the series. To clarify, we will be talking about whether or not the Commonwealth would be affected the way that the game depicts it if a nuclear explosion hit it, and what the subsequent fallout that the game is named for would do. So, let's get to it. First, for the benefit of the uninformed, we will start by telling you a bit about radiation. Now, there are two kinds of radiation, ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation, the latter of which is mostly harmless. That's why today we will be focusing on the former. Ionizing radiation gets its name from the effect it has on atoms. Now, if any of you have been in a first grade science class, you'll know that atoms are made up of subatomic particles. The ones we will be talking about today are electrons. When ionizing radiation passes through an atom, it causes the electrons to get excited and fly out of its atom to the space in between atoms. Now, this is quite obviously a very bad thing, seeing as electrons are what let atoms react with other atoms. Now that you know what ionizing radiation does, let's tell you about the three different kinds of radiation. First, there's alpha radiation. Alpha radiation is the weakest type of radiation. It can be stopped by just about anything, including the clothes on your back. The next kind of radiation is called beta radiation. It can be stopped by wood or something similar, while easily passing through cloth. Lastly is gamma radiation. You might have heard of it from things like the Hulk and other comic books, if a bit more science fiction than fact. It is by far the most dangerous of the three, and it would take nothing short of solid lead or thick concrete to stop the radiation. Fun fact, the three types of radiation are named after different Greek letters. Somewhat interesting, if you're into that kind of stuff. Well, now that you know a bit more about how radiation works, let's talk explosives. To be specific, what kind of nuclear bombs were used in Fallout 4? Well, from what I can find, the bombs used were anywhere from 200 kilotons to 750 kilotons. Well, now that we know what kind of bombs, we need to know where they hit. Well, from what I can find, the nuke would have hit right next to a golf course south of Watertown, Massachusetts. My location for ground zero may be a mile or two off. But with this level of destruction, a mile or two won't change much. So, now that we know the where, how are we going to figure out what would happen in the case of this explosion? Well, the answer isn't very pretty, let me tell you. I managed to find a website that is pure, absolute nightmare fuel. It tells you what would happen if a nuke hit a certain place of your choosing. It is absolutely terrifying what it would do. I used this simulation with three different sizes. One was 200 kilotons, one was 475 kilotons, and by far the most terrifying was 750 kilotons. For 200 kilotons, there were over 56,000 deaths and over 150,000 injuries, 50% chance of third-degree burns. Two hospitals, one fire station, 50 schools, and 32 churches, along with other places of worship, were destroyed. For 750 kilotons, there were over 100,000 deaths and over 300,000 injuries. 32 hospitals, 3 fire stations, 84 schools, and 52 places of worship were destroyed. For 750 kilotons, the death count was over 135 deaths, 135,000 deaths, and over 410,000 injuries. Burn rates are the same at 50%. 62 hospitals, 5 fire stations, 115 schools, and 81 places of worship were destroyed. Now, as I wrote this script, when I came to this part, I grew sick to my stomach, as I do again now. It's absolutely terrifying what would happen. Now, if you want to find out how the follow spread down to the number, follow the links in the description. Now, as it is a nice middle number, we will use the stats for 475 kilotons. Now, it is quite suffice to say that the fallout covers more than enough of the Commonwealth for mutations to take place. Now, first, we will discover if the mutations that took place are possible. In a later video, we will discuss whether or not the sole survivor, as well as Sean, would have survived their freezer nap. Now, first, we have to remember that in the Fallout universe, mutations are not always made from the radiation. It is also made by the forced evolutionary virus, better known as FEV. Now, I will have to mostly leave the animal mutations alone, as I cannot find enough steadfast facts about what causes their mutations. First, let's take a look at the ghouls. As many of you may well know, there are two kinds of ghouls. Firstly, there's the normal ghoul. The normal ghoul, while terribly deformed and having a very extended lifespan, in some cases living for over 200 years, are rather normal in all other aspects. Secondly, there's the feral ghoul. This type of ghoul shares all aspects of a normal ghoul, except for the fact that they have gone completely insane from the radiation rotting away their brains. Now first we will cover the deformation. This is quite easy to explain. It is not uncommon for a mutation to cause deformities, not unlike that of a ghoul. Now, you may ask, what about the long life? Well, it is quite possible that a genetic mutation could cause an increased lifespan. This is through the use of telomeres. Now, telomeres are caps, so to speak, at the end of each piece of DNA. They protect your chromosomes, acting almost like the tip of a shoelace, by protecting the end of the DNA strand and keeping it from fraying. Now, it could be said that as you age, your telomeres shorten, but in reality, the opposite is true. What really happens is the shortening of your telomeres causes you to age, in theory at least. Now, a mutation to your DNA could quite possibly slow down the shortening of your telomeres. So, that is now settled. Ghouls, both caused by FEV or radiation, are possible. And if you're asking about the brain rotting away, all that would be required in some cases would be the brainstem for them to function properly, for the way that they act at least. Now, on to supermutants. Now it is good to note that these are only caused by FEV. There are different strands of FEV. Some of the strands cause the subject to become extremely intelligent, as well as abnormally strong. But the strand we will be discussing today is the one found in the Commonwealth. This strand starts by having the same effects. But after around the time of a month, if shorter or longer, depending on the dosage, and if they're being turned into a behemoth or not, the subject's mind will begin to leave them. Now they are merely strong, as well as long-lived, as the ghoul possibly even longer or shorter. But it is impossible to tell, as there were no super mutants as soon as the bomb fell. To the best of my knowledge, that is. The aging has already been covered in our talk of the ghouls, so instead let's focus on the strength of mind loss. Seeing as there are a large number of diseases that can cause extreme muscle growth, one of the most known is genetic and is known as the giantism gene. I know of this because I have this gene. It only affects my legs, and only the muscles at that. But it is possible for it to affect the entire body, including bone mass as well as muscle mass. It can be one of the two, or both of them. Now, as far as both the gain and loss of intelligence concerns, it is not only possible, but quite common. The loss of one's mind can be seen in the disease known as Alzheimer's. The increasement of someone's mental health, as well as capacity, is something we have chased after for years, decades even. But as recently discovered, we can increase the memory and of the mentally disabled, sometimes above the point of a normal human. This is a project that is funded by the USA's Department of Defense. So, as far as the mutations in the human, like mutants, it is quite possible. And therefore, seeing as most of the mutations are the same or similar in all the mutants, crossing over even to the animal-like mutants, we can safely assume that they too are possible. Now, in the next video, as I stated earlier, we will be covering the freezer nap of Sean and the sole survivor, and whether or not they would survive. Find out in the next episode of Is Fallout Possible? This is Pig Plays, signing off. Have a good night, good evening, or whenever you're listening to this. And I now say goodbye.